Hey guys, so right now I'm going to be making the Ministry Progress Summary video through October 16th, 2023. Now, it's been a good long time since I did one of these, probably about 6 months. In fact, I think it's about 6 months to the day. The last one I did was back in April, and there's various reasons for that. I will get into a couple of those kind of as we go here. But just at a high level, what's in this release? We started up a Bible study of part 1 of the Bible Basics series on Ichthys. So we had been going through part 6a of this same series. Probably a little more than a year ago, we had finished that one off. So that was Parapatiology, the study of the Christian walk. This new study we are picking up with part 1, so Theology Proper, the study of God. So we have roundabouts 9 lessons or so that we've started in that. So, we've been going a couple months here. I haven't quite gotten the videos up. I'll mention that as we go through the content here. So that's one big chunk of new things that's in this release. Something else, I did some verse-by-verse studies in this release. So I have been going to a Bible study going through Romans, local to me, one of the local churches. And I've been writing some of that stuff up. And for the first couple chapters, I went in a lot of depth. And so I actually split that off. So through Romans 1 and Romans 2 have verse by verse going through those chapters, as well as 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5. And so that's kind of at a high level what a lot of the content in this release is. I should say, I am intending to be more consistent in this. I kind of kept moving the goalposts as I was considering what I wanted in the release. And so that's kind of why it ended up rolling some. I've been very busy trying to get all of these things done, of course, but I have every intention of not having the release cadence here be every 6 months. And so you'll kind of see the scope of things as we go here. One of the things about delaying is, well, there's a lot more things in this release. So I think by my count, there's like 47, I want to say, 47 content pages. About 10 of those are derivative from the Bible Basics series on Ichthys. So mostly copy pasting the study, splitting it into slides, adding some things here and there. But that still leaves on the order of 40 or so content pages, kind of unique to this website, things that I've written. And so obviously that's a lot, right? And so we'll get into it. We'll go through the outline here in a sec, but this was just kind of a high level of kind of what's in this release. And so stay tuned and we'll go through the outline in just a moment here. All right, so just a little bit of the things we just mentioned here, the Bible Basics study, the verse-by-verse studies in Romans and 1 Thessalonians. Well, we'll get to that in a second here. Going through the outline, these are the things that we're going to be going over today. So first off, just going to talk a little bit about this Ministry Progress Summary in general, just some meta information about, things specific to it, how it's outlined and formatted and things like that. Then I'm actually going to be going over the new content from my friend's ministry. So I helped my friend and roommate launch his ministry website within this content cycle here. And so I had spent a good few weeks on this, helping him get all of his stuff organized and get the website hosted and launched, and all of the, the email for the website set up and the servers and whatnot. And then after that, we'll go over the Bible study recording that we have resumed here, going through the Bible Basics series on Ichthys. Mentioned this in the introduction just now. So this has taken up a good bit of my time on Saturdays. We are trying to be a little bit more organized in how we're doing the recordings, but this is our weekly Zoom Bible study on Saturdays that has started back up. And then I'll be going over some of the local Bible studies I've been participating in. There's one where we've been going through Romans, and based off of the notes that I took from that, I had actually started doing a verse-by-verse study in Romans, got through a good bit of the first couple chapters of Romans, pretty detailed, but kind of decided maybe this isn't quite the right time for that. So I'm going to try to keep writing up my notes from the discussion group that we have, but maybe not quite go in as much depth as I have started to do here. And then also go over this other Bible study that I led for a week in 1 Thessalonians. I did 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5, and I kind of filled in a lot of the notes that I'd prepared for that week and made this another verse-by-verse study. So this is going through 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5. And then just some of the other miscellaneous things that have occupied my time over the course of these months, some of the theological conversations in the other discussion groups we have, work on some of my other kind of upcoming future plan studies. And then finally, as has been normal for these ministry progress summaries, going to kind of close by going over what some of my plans are for the future, what I'm going to be working on in the next little bit. And then after that, That's kind of where people who just want the short version could probably stop watching in the video or stop reading in the summary. Well, this is going to be the index of all of the new content that I have here. So kind of broken out by section or category. We're going to be kind of doing a whirlwind overview of all of the pages that are new to this release. Like I said, at ballpark, I think at 45 to 47 of them, quite a few new pages here to go over. And so I'm not going to go read you all the summaries and things, but the idea is just going to be kind of to get an overview of what new things were added in this release. So first thing that we're going to be going over here is just talking about some meta information about this ministry progress summary video itself. So it's kind of been a minute, like I said, probably almost 6 months to the day, in fact, since I did the last one of these. And I had every intention of being better about this, of doing more of them more frequently. But as we'll kind of get to in talking about some of the later things, I had all these things come up that kind of moved the goalposts. I was trying to meet these goals, just finish that one last thing before I released, and that just ended up turning into me deferring this video for a long time as I kept trying to finish things, but it just didn't happen for various reasons. And I won't bore you with all the details, but I'm going to try to be somewhat better about this moving forward in the future. You know, hopefully I can kind of get myself off of the perfectionism treadmill a bit and kind of just release more on a rolling schedule rather than always trying to finish, I don't know, certain things and kind of just give myself permission in my head to not have it be perfect before things go out, you know, not have all of the content in a particular section done or what have you. But you know, we'll get there as we go in the study. One other thing to note here, in some of the past ministry progress summary videos, I've kind of given an overview of just other stuff going on in my life, you know, other things sucking my attention and my time and things like that. I'm kind of not going to do that anymore. I made the call here, going to probably try to make that sort of thing, going over, I don't know, just practical stuff, kind of on my personal YouTube channel, just to keep these videos even shorter than they sometimes have been, just because a lot of that stuff really isn't directly ministry related. It's kind of just like reasons why, I don't know, maybe I didn't get more done, you know, if I had a lot of practical stuff, you know, so for example, going on a business trip or being on vacation or having, I don't know, health problems or practical stuff, your car breaks down, you know, all of these things have actually happened to me in the last 6 months. And so all of those were things that I spent time on, you know, outside of just the ministry stuff. But, you know, people really don't probably care that much on the ministry front. So I don't know why I actually hadn't thought of doing this before, but, you know, going to kind of do that now because I think it makes perfect sense. So not going to spend more time on that, but just a note, if you're interested in hearing about the other things that are going to be a separate video on my personal YouTube channel rather than showing up here on the summary video for the new ministry content. And finally, last thing to say, because this video is covering so much ground, because it is representing all of the work from the last 6 months or so that this ministry is going to be releasing, well, it's probably not going to get absolutely everything that has happened. So I've done some styling changes. I don't know, like cleaned up some summaries here and there, things like that. This is kind of the obvious downside of leaving such big breaks between releases, is that, you know, it's just hard to capture all of that work that's been done. So even with that being said, you know, I'm going to just kind of accept that I'm not going to get everything, because if I tried to make it completely comprehensive and, I don't know, kind of put it under the microscope to make sure I got absolutely everything, well, that would probably mean I procrastinated even longer on this release. So I don't think I missed anything real big. I think almost all of the new content pages at least will be here, but some of the framework stuff, I don't know, is probably the stuff people don't care about that much, you know, like some of the styling updates and fixing a couple bugs here and there, things like that. Well, maybe not everything made it into this write-up here in the summary, but nonetheless, I do think this is pretty representative of the big stuff that got done. All right, so the first actual content-related thing we're going over here is going to be talking about the website of my close friend and roommate, Jordan Bomberger, launched his ministry website. This has been several months back, so I'm a little bit behind, like I said, because of all of these things that kept making me push my own content release video here back some. But Jordan's website went live probably, I don't know, 3 months ago or so. And I helped a good bit with this, just organizing some of the content, getting the web hosting set up, you know, getting the email routing set up so that the mail goes to the address for his website, things like this. Mailing list, I could go on, but lots of practical details towards launching and maintaining a website. And because, you know, I'm the software developer, it kind of makes sense for me to help. So we did a lot of stuff here, got all of his content ready, and he has launched. And so I am quite excited about this. It's good to have another ministry just that I can link to. So I, of course, am kind of the ministry that I reference most is this one, Ichthys Bible Study for Spiritual Growth. So this is mostly a text ministry website. There's also a YouTube channel, kind of in the same circles, I would say. Teaches similar things. The person who runs this YouTube channel, Kurt Omo, went to seminary with Dr. Luganville, who runs Ichthys, and so they know each other, and of course Jordan and I know each other. But all of these are good other ministries, aside from my own, that have lots of valuable content. And so, long story short, Jordan's ministry, he actually has a lot of things up now. So probably a good bit more than me, if I'm being honest. So, topical studies. Just looking at the state here, see, there's probably about 10 of these. I think there's more like 12 maybe. And these are longer. So like if you look at the sidebar links here, you can see the scroll bar here is none too small. And so these are long studies on just various facets. And then there are also the small topical studies. And so these are, I don't know, maybe a few paragraphs, not nearly as long. So for example, this one is, it's not too long, it's not too short either, but a few paragraphs. And so that is kind of the scale of the content that's there. Jordan's actually also recently started a verse-by-verse examination of the Sermon on the Mount. And so, for example, the introduction, this is Matthew chapters 5 through 7, just more verse by verse. And so, I have a similar content section on my website, but so having his content all launched, this is great because, as I say, it's another ministry that I can link to. If Jordan covers stuff that that I'm writing about, I can link to his coverage of the same thing, or maybe I don't write about stuff, but if I think he's already done a good job on it, I can just link it, things like that. Just an indication of the respect I have for my friend is that, like I am actually planning to link to some of his stuff. And so, it's not that I never do that to other ministries either, but, it just should be an indication here of the regard I have for my friend's efforts, is that I think it is worthy of reading, and so therefore I will link to it in my own things. And so I really do encourage people, if you are a fan of the things that I do or the things that Ichthys and Bible Academy do, to go give the website a look. Together, he and I spent a lot of time kind of getting his website up, getting things organized, and I think it's very valuable and it's worth looking into if you are interested in more text studies. So his website is mostly text, similar to Ichthys, no videos, not quite like my ministry or Bible Academy, which do have videos, but it's an excellent other ministry resource. So won't belabor the point more than that. I really encourage people to go check it out. So the link will be here in the slides, also, of course, in the text write-up when this gets posted on my website. All right, so next going to be talking about the group Bible study over Zoom that we do on Saturday afternoons. So we had kind of been on hiatus for a while. We had previously done a study of part 6a in the Bible Basics series on Ichthys, which was the study of the Christian walk, peripateology. And this time we're actually going through the first part in that same series, the Bible Basics series, going over theology proper, which is the study of God. And so thus far, we are about 9 lessons in, 10 lessons in. We have finished the introductory part of the series, going over the essence of God. So talking about his infinite nature and his perfect character, the essential qualities of God. And we've also started talking about the Trinity and evidence for the Trinity, what the Trinity is, what it is not, things like that. So people who are familiar with the past study of Bible Basics 6a that we did, they may be glad to learn that we were trying to stay a little bit more focused in this one. And so there were some lessons in the last one where we kind of followed all the rabbit trails in our discussions. And this time we are kind of trying to optimize it a little bit more for the recording, for this wider dissemination, if you will. And so we stay a little bit more on topic, at least that's been the goal. And I'm quite pleased with the direction that this study has taken, the way that we've organized things, kind of bouncing in discussion. So kind of my friend and co-host, Audie, and I, we'll kind of feed off each other in discussion, but we are staying more or less on topic with the given things that we're going over in every lesson. And so the videos are not, they're not super short, maybe like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, like some people might think, but more on the realm of, say, each sub part of the video maybe is 15 to 20 minutes, leaving the whole video at an hour rather than 2 hours. And so I think it's a lot more focused than our past series was, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So I'm excited that this study has started back up. So, Saturday afternoons, I'm just kind of going to give information to plug the study a bit here. These Bible studies that I'm talking about, they're actually completely open to anyone who wants to join. So we have a community forum as well as WhatsApp groups for more or less people who read Ichthys and listen to Bible Academy and people kind of in those circles. We have probably, I don't know, about 10 people who quite actively participate in the WhatsApp groups. You have even more than that on the forum. But if you want to be involved in this, if you want to be there so that you can ask questions or just listen in live, you can join the community. There's a link here to fill out the form. So if you want to join the forum, you need an email address. And if you want to join the WhatsApp, you need a phone number. But if you send this to me, it goes straight to my email. It doesn't get sent to anyone else. And I'll just add you directly to the lists. And that way, when we send out the links on Saturdays to join the Bible study, you can actually take part in this too. And so we do meet 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that is Atlanta or New York on the world clocks. And that means that, we can actually get people in Europe as well. One of our Audie, who, like I said, is kind of my co-host in this, he lives in Nigeria, so he is like 5 hours ahead of us. So Saturday afternoons kind of work well as a global international time. And that is when we meet at present. So if you are interested, you can also actually just email me as well. So Stephen with a V at BibleDocs.org. And if you email me, I can add you to it as well. You don't have to fill out the form, but however you want to do it, if you're interested, please do join us, because we always love to have new folks come and participate. So that's where I'll stop, just plug in the study. But if you are interested, we really do. We'd love to have new people. So just going over a little bit about why I'm not posting the videos for this yet. So we are probably 2 or 3 months into this. We've recorded, I think, 9 lesson videos. Each of those lessons have subparts and things like that. So I have this backlog of videos that we've already recorded, and I kind of want to maybe do a little bit better on the video format. So I'd like to add in slide transitions. So when we transition between topics, I'm trying to automate some of the time stamping of the videos as well for the topic transitions so that this scales better over time. And so I have like a very specific way I want to do it. And it's just, I bumped into some issues here and there, and I haven't gotten around to processing and posting all the videos because I'm trying to do maybe a little bit more than I was doing previously. And so part of the reason, and I did kind of mention this before, part of the reason this ministry update is coming out so late is because I wanted to get these videos in the update. And I kept pushing back the timing of the update to try to give myself more time to actually finish things here, but it just hasn't happened yet due to all the other things I'm trying to get done. So all of the in-person ministry stuff that I'm doing, participating in 2 in-person Bible studies, some of the events with that, writing up all the other content that we'll be going through here. It's not like I haven't done anything. It's just I haven't actually gotten done with this yet. And because I was trying to get done with this before I released this update, it's part of the reason why it's taken so long. Of course, it's not the only reason, but it's a reason. And so I did kind of eventually just decide, I need to release what I've been working on anyway, videos or no videos. And so hence we're getting this update, which is no videos. But I am working hard. This is a very high priority for me in the next bit. I'm going to try to catch up so that I post each new video as we finish. So it's not necessarily going to be absolutely every week. If we get through all the sections in one of the lessons in a particular week, maybe we do 2 or 3 sets of slides, depending on how things have been broken up, well, then I could post it, but it kind of depends, right? And so we'll kind of see how things play out, but it's going to be probably on the realm of every week or every other week that we'd have a new video go up. And so I'd like to catch up so that I can kind of do that more real time in the study here. And so for people who follow the YouTube channel, you may see a bunch of videos. Like I said, I think there should be 9 or 10 that go up here, kind of hopefully in the next several weeks as I work my way through the backlog, trying to get things processed in the format I want. And so I'm going to try to clear that backlog before I make the next ministry progress summary video. But since it's delayed this one so much, I am going to try to be a little bit more cutthroat about it. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and I'll make another one of these before I wait another 6 months to do it. But we'll kind of see. This is going to be a high priority for me for the next little bit. All right, so turning from the recording of the videos there for the Bible Basics study, I'm going to be talking now about all of the other written content that is composing the things in this release. So I have been participating in a local Bible study here in Warner Robins, going over the book of Romans. And so I have been taking notes week by week. It's a discussion-driven study, so our host comes up with some discussion questions, and we sit there, we read the chapters, or we've been going about half a chapter a week, I think, and then we talk through the discussion questions, pull in scripture here and there, and I've been taking notes as we've been doing this. And so my idea was I was going to post the discussion questions for folks in the local groups that I'm a part of, and then also just post the notes that I'd taken, clean them up a little bit as I do it. So that was going to be the general idea. But the thing is, I ended up writing way more. As I was writing up the notes, it just got a lot longer. Again, perfectionistic tendencies here. And so I started out with just probably a couple pages of notes, going through Romans 1, Romans 2 when we first started this. And then that turned into 20 pages typed. And so ended up spinning that off kind of into a separate thing. But going to be working here on actually getting just the discussion questions and my actually brief notes. So the notes that I jot down during the groups, I'll still clean it up a little bit, add a bit more here and there, look up some references if I know there's a verse I want to talk about, things like that. But I'm going to try to keep the scope more limited than it was, because I ended up spinning off a verse by verse study, which is the thing we'll talk about next, because I wasn't limiting the scope here. And so this is actually another reason why, again, I'm so late on this update, is because I have notes, we're on Romans 10, Romans 11 now, from just a bunch of weeks of this that I've kind of half done. And I was going to try to kind of finish everything before I did this release. But again, there's so many other things I'm doing. I just haven't gotten around to completely finishing it. But I wanted to kind of have that be my line in the sand. And after I did that, I'd release, but that didn't happen either. So again, going to kind of just go ahead and post discussion questions. So the questions that we've been going over week by week. So I can do that without completely finishing my write-up for all of them. And so that's what I'm going to kind of do right now. We'll go over this a little bit more in the later part of this video where I'm going over the actual content. I did finish one of the weeks completely here. So for Romans chapter 8, I got around to completely finishing that because I just took better notes for that chapter, I guess. And then I also had all of the things that I had turned into the verse by verse summary, which we'll go over in a second. But the general concept for this is we have this discussion group. I am taking some notes as we do that, and I was just going to post the discussion questions and my notes. So that's what this is from the content perspective. This is a longer topical study on my site. I think it's called Second Baptist 2023 Roman Study or something like that. Second Baptist is the name of the church that's hosting this study. And so this is one set of the new content going here. And I will be filling this in more in the future, moving forward, getting all of my notes posted alongside the discussion questions, which is mostly what I'm posting here in this content update. All right, so kind of looked at this a little bit last time. We were talking about the discussion-based Roman study. Well, in the process of writing up the initial sets of notes for Romans 1 and Romans 2, from that, the discussion questions that we'd had in that group and some of my notes and responses to them, well, I just kept thinking of more things I wanted to say. They kept getting longer and longer, and I didn't limit the scope real well there initially. And so the initial notes I'd taken just turned into a whole bunch of new content. So 20 pages, perhaps, something like that. And that was just for the first two chapters. And it was kind of at this point that I decided that I was biting off a lot more than I thought I had been initially. If I was going to keep up that pace of production, with all the things that I was writing there, I would kind of have to focus on only this. I wouldn't be able to do other things on the ministry front. And because of that, I kind of decided to back burner this for now. So I kind of got 2 chapters in and then was like, wow, this is taking a long time. Maybe I won't do it like this. That's kind of what happened. And so I emailed my mentor, so Dr. Luganville of Ichthys.com, all sorts of interesting questions about just matters of interpretation. Romans is a very theology-heavy book. Lots of interesting things to talk about, especially for the first few chapters. That's where my focus was when I was spending more time in depth on it. But I've just kind of decided this isn't the right time for it. There's lots of other things I want to get done as well. And so, I will probably come back and do more here eventually, but I got through 2 chapters. So to kind of summarize all this, I got through about 2 chapters and then decided that it just wasn't where I wanted to be sinking all my time at the moment. So I did go ahead and post in this ministry release. I posted all of the things that I got through. So I didn't quite finish chapter 2. I got about halfway through chapter 2 in Romans. So like Romans 2 verse 16, I think, is the last verse that I talk about in this release. And so, about, Romans 1, Romans 2, the first half of Romans 2, and all of that is the in-depth write-up in the verse-by-verse section here. And actually, I'll talk more about this when we get to the index of all the new content itself. But the first couple discussion pages in this study for the discussion questions and the notes, which is a kind of a separate thing from this verse-by-verse study. Well, the first couple chapters here mostly just reference the verse-by-verse study because that's where I started. That's where I got the questions from. Or rather, I got the questions from the discussion pages, but then, I followed that in the verse-by-verse study. And so I didn't duplicate that content is what I'm saying. The discussion pages in the Roman study just reference the verse-by-verse ones for the ones that I actually did matching in that way. But this took a good long time. I think there's about 20 pages in the first chapter of Romans that I did, probably about, 6 or 7 in the second chapter for the verse-by-verse study. Those are going over different verses or different sets of verses, and we'll get to that when we go through the content index. But this was a big chunk of time that I've spent here over the last several months working on verse-by-verse content, going over the first couple chapters of the book of Romans. All right, so next, going to be talking about the same thing, more or less, just for the book of 1 Thessalonians. So a separate local Bible study I've been involved in, so different church actually, but meets different time of the week. Well, we've been going through 1 Thessalonians, at least we were when we were having this study. And so one of the weeks when the normal study organizer was sick, I volunteered and hosted it in my house and led the study. And we went through 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And so I had prepared notes for that week when I was leading. They were a little bit more section by section, so chunks of verses rather than verse by verse. But I decided to actually go ahead and kind of fill out some of what I'd gone over from that set of notes there. And so I filled in the notes, wrote a lot more, wrote about some things that I hadn't actually covered when we had this. That Bible study was just one night, it's maybe an hour and a half. And I didn't have a lot of time to go into all the details and some of the things I wanted to talk about. So I kind of took the notes that I had from that night that I led the Bible study and expanded them a lot. And so it actually ended up being a lot longer than I thought it might, but I'm happy with how things turned out here as well. And so pretty similar in format, because this is also a verse-by-verse study here to the verse-by-verse study in Romans that we just talked about. So for the first couple of chapters of Romans, well, except this is just for 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And the reason why I didn't start at 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 is because I was leading the Bible study here for chapters 4 and 5. So I got the last couple chapters in that study there. And so there's probably, I don't know, so if there were maybe ballpark 25 pages from the Romans study, there's probably maybe 10 or 12 from both chapters here in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. And so just a lot more content here in the verse-by-verse section, going over these two chapters in 1 Thessalonians. So next, just going to talk a little bit here about some of the other theological conversations I've had. So over the course of these months here, I am involved in a kind of a debate groups, have some Eastern Orthodox friends who I debate theology with, the forum and the WhatsApp group associated with this ministry, where readers of Ichthys come and talk. We've had some interesting discussions in those chats as well. So I actually don't have a lot of contents coming directly from these things now. I just thought I'd mention here, and this has been something that's been in the back of my head for a while now, that I kind of have the notion that I might mine some of these conversations, these theological discussions for content ideas eventually. And so it kind of gives me a jump start to be able to go off of a conversation I already had, to see points, where the conversation was going, what we were focusing on, what some of the questions were. It just makes it a lot easier to come up with new ideas. And so I am kind of hopeful. And, this hasn't just been the last few months. This has happened. This has been something that I've been involved in these groups that, that have these interesting theological discussions for a few years now. And just going back through some of the archives of some of the conversations we've had, I really think will be a good way for me to maybe speed up the production of some content, get the ideas for what I can write about or talk about. And so I have some ideas there. Not going to spend too much more time here right at the moment, but it's a place where I would like to invest a bit more time and energy over time, because hopefully that way I can just kind of increase the rate of production. I don't have quite as much I don't know, original work to do, if you will, if I can kind of guide what I'm doing based off of a conversation that we've already had. So one of the last things we're going to talk about here, just another thing that took some of my time, maybe not as much as all the verse by verse series from this release, but I have done some work on a couple of the longer multi-part studies I have in progress. So one of these is kind of talking about how we as Christians ought to view the idea of judging others and what exactly goes into that. So like the passages in the first part of Matthew chapter 7 that talk about not judging hypocritically, with a self-righteous condemnation of others, that sort of thing, figuring out, well, we need to exercise discernment, but we shouldn't condemn other people in our hearts. How do we walk that line? And then the other one of these large multi-part studies I've been working on deals with the largely unpleasant topic of lukewarmness in the modern church. So not the most fun thing to talk about, but very necessary for us to have an accurate picture of basically what is and is not quote unquote, doing well as a Christian. What does God want us to do actually versus maybe the lip service some people give to God and not allocating the time and resources in their life to actually following him as they should. And, this isn't just other people. This is us as well. We need to be reflexive. How much time do we spend doing spiritual things versus, I don't know, watching TV shows or hanging out with friends or going to movies and things like this? None of which may be particularly sinful in and of themselves, but our priorities need to be firmly on the truth. And so those are kind of the idea of those studies. And so both of these are studies I'd like to get out in the near future. This is kind of some of the things I want to work on instead of sinking all of my time into the verse by verse Romans series, because these are kind of keystone fundamental initial studies I wanted to have. I'm probably going to have another one eventually talking about kind of Christian epistemology as well, but one at a time. So I have a lot of things kind of partially done in work here. And so I'm constantly coming up with more things I want to cover, more points I want to make in these studies, and changing my mind about how I want to order things and things like that. But I did make more progress on this, and maybe not tons, but this was another area where I sunk a good bit of my time in the last few months since the last update. All right, so to kind of finish off the more focused part of this ministry progress summary, I'm going to be talking next about kind of where I'm going to be spending my time for the next little bit. So as already mentioned, I would like to finish processing and posting all of the past weeks for our new Zoom Bible study going over Bible Basics Part 1 Theology off of Ichthys. So all of the 9 or 10 lessons that we've already done, I would like to get those videos processed and then put up on YouTube, linked on the site, all of that, so that I can kind of keep up with it week by week after that. And so that's going to be kind of a top priority of mine here. It's kind of where I'm going to try to sink my time next so that I can get that process down, kind of hopefully streamline it some so that I can keep up with it week by week as we keep going. So Audie, which is my kind of co-host in this series here, he and I have talked about kind of doing a parallel study on the Coming Tribulation series on Ichthys as well, meeting more ad hoc during the week as our schedules allow, rather than the same scheduled time every week, kind of as we do with this Bible Basics series, which we meet on Saturday afternoons for that. Well, we might try this in the future. They're very busy right now for various reasons, and so maybe that won't work out so well right at the moment, but it is something we've talked about a little bit, and if that ever does materialize, well, I'll be preparing for recording, processing, and posting maybe 2 or even 3 long or in-depth videos every week or 2. And so that will obviously keep me busy. Not quite sure if that's going to happen right now or not, but it's something that maybe we'll talk about a bit more. I'd also like to catch up and keep up better with posting all of my notes from that Romans discussion group that I mentioned before. So posting the discussion questions as well as my brief notes, emphasis on brief rather than the full verse by verse write-up that I ended up doing for the first couple chapters. Just so that I can keep up with that a little bit better, because I always feel a little bit behind because, I am ballpark, 7 weeks behind in that study here in terms of what I've actually posted. And so I would like to kind of get caught up with that and then keep up with it better, because we're not going to be doing this forever. Eventually we're going to finish the book of Romans. We're in chapter 11 right now out of 16. And so I'd like to actually get all of that stuff put up on the website because I have taken notes, with varying levels of detail, and I would like to clean all that up, get all that posted so I'm caught up there. Also like to finish the 2 studies I mentioned. So, the one about judgment for us as Christians, as well as lukewarmness in the modern church, kind of get those done because I have a lot written for those as well. Just haven't kind of gotten it all polished and ready to go yet. And then I would also actually like to finish the verse-by-verse study of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. So we'll go over the verses that I did cover, but I actually didn't get quite to the end of the chapter. I decided that I needed to make this release, otherwise I never would. And so I still have maybe 5 or 10 verses to go there at the end of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. I like to do that just so that I at least finish the chapter. And so that's kind of on the writing front. That's some of my plans in the immediate future, kind of get some of these cleaned up, get caught up, get finished with some of what I've started here. And then finally, a little bit of a side tangent here. I am weighing the idea of getting involved in a few online Christian communities. So this would be like forums, Facebook groups, subreddits, Discord servers, that sort of thing. And so the idea would be to engage a little bit more actively with others rather than only posting static content on the website. So I only have so much time, of course, but it's been something that I thought might be a good fit, especially as I kind of finished getting the voice recognition and text editing thing set up a little bit better. I'm already a reasonably fast touch typist, but getting some of the other things set up so that I'm even faster would kind of free up even more time, and I could perhaps use some of that to get involved in this way. So there's kind of a split. Part of me enjoys having the conversations with people across geographic locations in a way that you can't with local groups, and especially the focus on theological discussion, theological debate is something that I have had a hard time finding groups local to me that are really interested in that specific thing. So we have meetings, and we do some degree of Bible study, but the focus isn't quite on the sort of in-depth discussion that I would really value. And I might find some of that more in some of the online communities. At least that is the thought. So I don't know exactly where this will be going, but it is an idea I've had and something I've been weighing, especially as I weigh the commitments that I have to my local Bible studies. I'd like to keep participating there, but if I only have so much time, where do I invest all of it? And especially balanced against all of the other content I'm trying to write and produce and make videos for. Basically, how do I allocate all of my time in this? And so just another idea I've had, something that I might look into a little more, at least in the next little bit. So that kind of closes out the plans here for the next couple things I'm going to be working on. And this is about the part in the video where if you were just watching for kind of the high level update, well, this was the high level update. And what we're going to be talking about next is kind of going through all of the pages, not necessarily one by one, but at least so that you have a sense of everything that has been worked in this release. And so that will probably take us a while, probably a good 10, 20 minutes. So if you just wanted to get the high level update, this is about when you can stop. If you want to keep more informed about the specific things that have been released, then watch on, because that's what we are going to be talking about next. All right, so kind of as we just mentioned here, the next thing that we're going to be going over in this progress update is kind of the index of the new content in this release. So we kind of mentioned all the high-level categories above, so like the Romans discussion, kind of discussion and notes pages, and then the verse-by-verse studies in Romans chapter 1, chapter 2, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, chapter 5, and then as well as the Bible Basics series and what we just talked about, some of the other things that I'm going to be doing in the future here. But I'm going to kind of be linking to each new page individually here in this next thing that we're going to be talking about. And I think this is actually exhaustive. So the following sections exhaustively list out all the new content pages in this release. I don't think I missed anything. And there's quite a few of them, as we'll see. So with that, we'll kind of get right into it. Starting out, it looks like with the Bible Basics lessons here. All right, so in terms of the lessons in Bible Basics Part 1, Theology, that we've gotten through in the months that we've started back up in this Zoom Bible study on Saturdays, I think we've gone through 9 sections here, if my counting is right. And so we have mostly been focusing on the essence of God as well as the Trinity. So the essence of God was the first few lessons here. I'm not actually going to go click through all of these. I mean, you certainly can. So if you open these links, you'll get taken to the website. Well, you won't right here, because actually these are relative links and I have this on my path. But when you view these slides on the website, you certainly will. And all of these lessons here, we have gone through already. I've already recorded the videos. These are the ones that I'm going to be working on processing and posting the next bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and you can see on the screen, but for people who may be listening to this on the video, we've gone through kind of the introduction to the essence of God, God's infinite nature, God's perfect character, kind of summarized everything we've talked about there for the essence of God, kind of introduced the Trinity, three persons in one essence. We've talked about how all members of the Trinity are deity. They're all distinct persons. They're all co-equal, co-eternal, and consubstantial, and they're all joint partakers of the same essence. So again, that's three persons in one essence is the classical definition of the Trinity in Christian theology. So that's kind of where we are here. We are going to keep going on the Trinity. There's more to talk about there in the next lessons that we have, but this is all of the content that we have gotten through so far for Bible Basics Part 1, Theology. So about 10 lessons there, and so each one of those has all of the content from that week in the Ichthys study kind of split out, header by header, and with the slides from that week also linked in the pages. So next one that we're going to be talking about is the kind of discussions, the discussion pages and the notes going along with that from this local in-person Bible study I've been going through the book of Romans. And so as I already mentioned in what we've talked about previously, I spent enough time on the first couple chapters that I actually turned my writing there into formal verse-by-verse study just because it got so long and I've been so detailed on some of the points there. And so the first couple discussion pages here, like the Romans 1 page with discussion questions in this other Roman study that I mentioned, it's a longer topical study rather than being verse-by-verse. Well, I actually kind of like cross-link to my verse-by-verse study for those. So for the Romans chapter 1 page and the Romans chapter 2 page, a lot of the discussion questions off of these pages from kind of like the Second Baptist study, that longer topical study I have on my site, a lot of them cross-link to the verse-by-verse studies that I already did in Romans. So I have quite a bit of content there, as I mentioned, but it's not different content from the verse-by-verse pages. I kind of, wrote up the answers to these discussion questions in enough depth that I just went ahead and made them a verse-by-verse study. I also actually got through the write-up for Romans chapter 8 completely, so I just had pretty good notes for that one. I think I'd had, like a better writing setup. We were just a little bit more focused that week. I was able to get more down. And so I went ahead and wrote up all of those notes as well. Those are posted. And then the other chapters here, so Romans 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, these are the ones that we've done so far that I have notes on, but I just haven't gotten around to organizing all the notes so that I can post them yet. That's going to be another high priority of mine. I mentioned, finishing, processing and posting all of the content for the Bible Basics series is something I'm working on right now. But I'm going to also be focusing on this in the next bit, try to catch up in this series as well, get all of my notes posted from this discussion group that we have. All right, and so when we talk about the verse-by-verse study of Romans, this is what it looks like. So all of these are links to the verse-by-verse studies here. And so I split it out. Some of them, as you can see, are kind of groups of verses. So this one is going over chapter 1, verses 23 through 25, but some of them are also just a single verse. And so I'm not going to go ahead and read all of this to you. I will say that, some of these are longer than others. So for example, this page here going over, does the concept of God giving up, does God ever give up on sinners? Talking about Romans 1:26, God giving people over to a depraved mind. That particular page is quite a bit longer than many of these other ones. I mean, there are some other ones as well. It's not the only one that's longer, but this one a little bit more technical as well, getting into, there's a section on this page going into the Greek grammar a bit. Talking about in Romans 1:27, when it talks about the due penalty for their error, what is the penalty and what is the error? It's actually a bit ambiguous in the Greek as well as the English. And so kind of talking through that as well. So some of these pages, what I'm saying, are a little bit longer, more complex than others, but all of these, pretty detailed, kind of in the write-up of these questions here. And so these are all of the content pages for Romans chapter 1. You can see from verse 1 all the way through the last verse, verse 32. I actually completely finished the questions here for this series in Romans chapter 1. So Romans chapter 1 all the way through verse by verse. And this is, of course, not the only things you can say ever about Romans chapter 1. These were just the ones from the discussion questions that I was basing my initial pass here of the verse by verse study on. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's about 20 pages here from Romans chapter 1. So all of these are separate write-ups. It's not just a paragraph or two. So, a good large chunk of content here, going specifically verse by verse over the first chapter of Romans. And then in much the same way, I have all of this writing that goes over about the first half of Romans chapter 2. So through verse 16 in Romans 2. And same concept, generally speaking, as the study from Romans chapter 1. There's a little bit less of them here. Some of these are long too. This one talking about, well, trying to find it. Where is it? Anyway, like this one here, going through 12 through 16, talking about, Romans 2:12 is kind of a hard verse to interpret. Talking about the those who die without the law and those who die under the law, and that sort of thing. And so kind of going to a good bit of detailed exegesis there, kind of pulling out what that text actually means. How do you fit it into the context of the verses that come about it? Paul actually digresses here in verses 13 through 15. So, verse 12 and verse 16 kind of go together, and verses 13 through 15 are kind of a digression that's kind of hard to get because not all of the English translations really kind of set that apart and make it obvious. But again, just kind of mentioning which ones are longer, which ones are a bit more detailed. This is one of the longer ones from this set of studies here, going over the second chapter of the book of Romans. And then just how we had verse by verse studies in the book of Romans here, we also have the same here, the same sort of thing here for 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5. And so this slide here, going over the ones in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, just same sort of concept here. You can see these are all groups of verses. Some of these groups are a little bit longer. Of particular note, this last one here talks a good bit about the concept of the rapture, pre-tribulational rapture, why that false doctrine is dangerous, things like that. But same concept, in-depth study going verse by verse over the contents of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And then finally, same sort of thing, but for 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. So this page here talking about staying awake and sober because we are children of the light. I do a lot of heavy comparison between this passage here in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and the Olivet Discourse in Matthew chapters 24 and 25. Very parallel passages. I actually talk some about how the verse in Matthew 24, verse 32, or is it 36? I think it's 36, that says, "No man knows the day or the hour." I talk about that here and the kind of the focus and the emphasis that we can put on eschatology, despite the fact that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. So kind of talk about all that. Other pages here that are long. This one kind of talking about relating to different groups of people. It's a short verse. There's just a lot kind of to break down there. Also, as I say, haven't actually quite finished this chapter. I only got through verse 15. There's more. I think it goes through like 22 or something. There's a few more verses for me to cover here. I'm planning on doing that. I mentioned that as kind of planned future work that I will get done here. So this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. This is kind of the last chapter here of these verse by verse studies that I got through in this particular release. And so overall, like I said, between these pages and these and these and these, I think it's ballpark 30 some odd of my own new content, plus all of the studies here from the Bible Basic series on the Ichthys, which are more highly derivative of the Ichthys. I added a few original sections and paragraphs here and there, but and that's not even counting all of the scaffolding here with the discussion questions from those pages that I will be filling in. So quite a lot of content in this release, as you can see. All right, well, that about does what we're going to be going over for this Ministry Progress Summary video here. And I'm not going to belabor all of this too much because we've already been over all of this. But, just to run through what we've talked about today again, I started out mentioning my friend's ministry here, so BibleDriven. Jordan's website launched several months back, and he has a lot of content that I recommend people check out just as another good supplement to this website or Ichthys or Bible Academy. Just another good Bible study website to maybe have on your radar. And as to the content in this release, we talked about how we started back up our Bible study of Bible Basics on Ichthys. So that is meeting on Saturday afternoons. We are recording that. I haven't quite gotten to put the recordings up, but that is what I will be working on in kind of the present here. And then, of course, we also went through the writings that I've done in the book of Romans chapters 1 and 2, and 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5, as well as going over some of the other things I've been working on and what I plan to work on in the future. And then towards the end, we went through all of the pages kind of individually, laying out all of the things that are present in this release. So this was just, kind of a long video, as I say, just because it's been a long time since I did the last one of these. But, hopefully this has helped kind of give people the sense of what is contained in this new ministry update. Oh, I think I'll switch back to video here just for the closing remarks. I should say that, as I've mentioned before, I am planning on getting the 9 or so lessons that we have up from the Bible Basics series put on the YouTube channel, hopefully in the next couple weeks here. I have a little bit more I got to figure out with how I want to process those, but I am hoping that it will be in the near future. And so stay tuned for that. You'll probably see the videos go up. I think there should be 9 of them, and try to get those done before I make the next update here. Just other things kind of in the community. If y'all could be praying, there's a couple prayer requests that folks have in our circles. So I'm not going to get into too many details, just for the family of a couple people in our groups and some of the things they're going through. And I should also say, of course, that the timing of this video, coming out in mid-October 2023, lots we can pray for in the world as well. So I hope this update has helped kind of give people a sense of what I've been focusing on the last few months and kind of what the new things are. And stay tuned, because exciting things coming up here in the future. So thanks for watching, and be sure to check back soon so that you can stay up to date with all of the new things that are coming down the pipeline.